Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. Joan served the state of California as a member on the Arts Council and on the Film Commission. She was formerly on the Architectural Commission and fulfilled 2 terms on the Fine Arts Commission for the city of Beverly Hills. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview magazine, Condé Nast Publications, and the Hearst Corporation, Joan covered the world of fashion, the mysteries of food, the excitement of theater, and the international art scene. She continues to find people who are on the cutting edge of their professions. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. We're taping here at the Hollywood Museum on Highland Avenue, and waiting to be profiled are designer Sue Wong and artist Phyllis Greene. Fashion designer Sue Wong was born in communist China, came to Los Angeles as a child, where she learned to create a world of art and fashion for herself. Do you remember your escape from China?
I do. I was five and a half years old.
Ooh.
And I was clutching this little pillow, and my mother said there are very important things in there and you mustn't lose it or drop it. So I was just clutching this very close to my chest, and it was dark and we were walking forever. And finally, when we reached the border guard station, my mother handed this pillow to the border guard, who basically released us to our freedom into Hong Kong.
Oh, that was the bribe?
Yes.
That was the bribe.
It was.
Very interesting. So it was dark.
It was
You
dark.
didn't know what was in it?
I didn't know what was in it until my mother told me later, many years later.
Wow. So that was pretty scary, because if you'd known about it, you wouldn't have been able to.
I would have been probably mortified as a child, and people were being persecuted, people were being killed. I don't know whether you know this, but a lot of people perished in the revolution. And
yes, coming through, and then you got into Hong Kong, right?
Yes, we lived in Hong Kong for about a year until my father petitioned for us to come to America to rejoin him.
So you were just mother and child?
It was just mother and child. My father quickly escaped, and he came to America first, and then my parents were separated for almost 6.5 years.
Was your
7
mother
years.
interested in fashion or
No,
in sewing
no.
or nothing? Did she sew your clothes?
She sewed my clothes as a child, but they were very funny looking,
But wouldn't you wish you had them now, maybe?
Well, maybe just as a memento, but basically they were pretty funny looking. But I think because of the scarcity in having really pretty clothes when I was a child, I probably became fascinated by fashion. And as a matter of fact, growing up in scarcity, because we were not allowed to have toys, I basically invented my own paper dolls. And so through these paper dolls, I created elaborate wardrobes.
Is it really true that at 9 years old you were designing your own or making your own clothes?
Yes, at age 9, I sewed up my first blouse, and it was a little bateau, and I added a touch of eyelet lace, at the neckline, and voila.
Where were
a new
you
designer
then?
was born.
Where were you, Sue?
I grew up in Culver City.
So that's where you did this little bateau
yes,
blouse?
Exactly.
And you went to school in Culver City?
I went to Culver City High School, and I was handpicked, out of 350 teenagers.
Applications. That was the great story. The May
Yes.
Company was doing something then.
Yes, I was chosen to be on their teen board, and I did modeling, I did floor displays, and I did sales. So, we just really, and that's my introduction into fashion.
So did that come from being at Culver City High?
Yes, it did. And then later on, as a, Venice Beach bohemian, I opened up my one-of-a-kind boutique, and I would really take vintage clothing, which I would really buy by the pound, extract all the beautiful details and motifs, and I would redesign the silhouettes, make my own pattern. My partner would do the sewing, and then we would display them gallery style, within almost like an installation, almost like an art installation. They would be hung from monofilament wires from the ceiling, so that you kind of walked into this fashion installation. It was really cool.
But did you go to fashion school?
I was a fashion school dropout.
Well, but look where you dropped out, to Venice with your clothes there.
Yes, so 7 years later, you know, my school, LA Trade Tech, honored me as their top alumni.
And you went there for a little while?
And I went there for just a few months. But, you know, everything I learned on the job.
But at that time, LA Trade Tech was a school to go to. I mean,
yes.
You would learn everything there.
Well, they were really more focused on the practical aspect of the fashion business.
Right. But you didn't ever learn to sew, did you?
Not really. I'm sort of more of an ideas person.
Right.
You know, I give really good orders.
When you did the May Company thing, I think at that time, the magazines were doing like teen things too, and bringing you in for fashion, and put your application in, we'll see if you win this award. So May Company, I guess all the other department stores, or a couple of department stores.
They all had their high-deb fashion board. So, you know, I was in the May Company teen board representing Culver City High.
And you learned so much.
I did. But I actually didn't learn a lot there. I really learned on the job. I mean, I really have been designing since I was 19 years old professionally.
Well, we can say, well, let's go back to when you were 19, let's say.
I had a lot of fun.
When I first met you at Arpegia.
Well,
was it?
Yes. Yes, that was a huge success story.
Because you started there as an intern.
Well, no, actually, I didn't start as an intern. I won a first-place scholarship that was sponsored by Arpegia.
Oh, that's what it was?
Which, on the basis of knocking off one of my dresses that I had done for a smaller company, and they sold over 300,000 units of that dress.
Is that right?
Yeah, so based on that, I was hired.
Oh,
they were only doing $3 million in volume, and with me at the helm, 3 years later, they were $52 million, which is probably the equivalent of $500 million today.
Is that when you became chief designer? Or did you
I
go
was
way
the only designer.
You were the chief designer, right?
I was the only designer.
What was their theme? Because how long were you with them?
I was with them for 3.5 years before I launched my own business very disastrously. But before that, I became this huge sort of designer hero. And I was living the jet set lifestyle, you know, in my early 20s, and by the time I was 25, I had really accomplished the American dream. I had 2 mansions side by side at the tip of Point Dume in Malibu. I had my home in the Hollywood Hills. I had an oceanfront residence in Hawaii. I was, you know.
And you're still in Hawaii, aren't you?
Yes, and I was, you know, driving a top-of-the-line Mercedes, making the equivalent of maybe $3.5 million a year. So I was really, you know, flying on the Concorde to Europe, to Paris, to London. I was living the life.
And then what?
And then I did a very stupid thing, and I decided to open up my own business.
This was all with Arpegia.
Yes, it was. It was. And
I say, isn't that when we met, though? When
Probably.
I was with Interview magazine.
Yes.
Because you knew Andy. You came to New York. You visited us.
Yes. It was a long time ago.
It was. Don't say it.
But it was really a lot of fun. That was a Studio 54 era, and I used to love going to Studio 54 as well.
What was your inspiration at Arpegia? What made it so important to the world?
I think I hit the right look at the right price at the right time.
Which was?
Basically a typical dress from me back in those days was between, let's say, $45 to $65. But don't forget, that was many years ago.
Right.
And, you know, that would really be the equivalent of what is, you know, young contemporary today.
Did you use the vintage idea?
I think I was always, you know, into vintage fashion. You know, I have a more romantic design sensibilities. And actually, my design signature is really based on old Hollywood glamour, and we're sitting here in the Hollywood Museum.
I know, isn't that great?
And did you know that I had a museum show here a couple of 3 months ago?
Oh, at the Hollywood Museum.
Yes,
I know.
yes.
We love Donnell Dadigan. She gave us the studio, and she has so much to do with old Hollywood. And one of your collections was old Hollywood.
Yes, but that's sort of a basic reoccurring theme, along with the honoring the 20s and the 30s, the flappers and the nostalgic stars of yesterday, because I just really watched a lot of pre-code Hollywood movies when I was younger, and I was just really mesmerized by how glamorous these creatures like Marlene Dietrich and Greta Garbo and Jean Harlow, I thought they were just really the most beautiful stars and creatures of their era, and of course later on they would become my iconic muses.
And so with this is now. We've gone through your early years.
Yes.
You've gone bankrupt. You made a big mistake. The big mistake was
Marrying the wrong man.
Oh, no.
Having wrong men in my life, you know.
No, but was that what happened with your business too?
Yes, yes.
Oh, it was.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Then.
I started the business in the middle of a very tumultuous divorce, very acrimonious divorce, and with 2 children.
And then where did you go?
Well, then I went to, I started companies for other people before relaunching my own label, basically 6.5 years later, because I really believed in myself.
Oh, you did launch your own?
Yes.
Is that when you opened to West Hollywood?
Yes, so this is the same company that I have today, which is, 29 years old.
Oh, so when you were in West Hollywood, you had all these glamour gals coming in. Who would come in to buy your clothes?
Bianca Jagger, Goldie Hawn, Victoria Principal, rock
would
stars.
They order, or would they buy, or would you design
both,
for them?
Both. Bianca Jagger came in and basically cleaned me out one season.
And when you go to design, do you make a sketch? Do you sketch?
Of course, I'm a beautiful sketcher. I'm an expert sketcher.
Good.
Just the best. I'm a detailist, so when I sketch, you can see every single detail.
And so you put the beads in, the embroidery.
Everything. Yes, yes. Or I make the comments after I sketch, and I tell my factories exactly how I want it.
Let's hold this. This is so great.
Thank you. This is really one of my motifs, and I sketch out in thumbnail what I want, and I really send it over to my art assistants who really draw it out in full scale. And I assign the colors, the beadwork, every
and that's
thread,
so different.
every bead.
That's so different from this, because this has much more
Yes.
of an opening in it, right?
Yes, but I mean, I do basically 1,500 of these designs a year. I'm very, very prolific, as you can see.
Wow.
So there are so many different looks
so this
that I
would
do.
be the collar?
Yes. Or, I might change my mind and use it as a cummerbund, a waist, midriff.
And what are you wearing today?
I'm wearing just something of my own creation that I whipped up for myself, and it's just really about 6 scarves all sewn up together and tied together, and it's comfortable, and it's silk jacquard, a jade color, and
Have you gone back to China?
all the time. Yes.
Do you? Do you get
Yes.
fabrics from there?
Well, a lot of fabrics I use are very diaphanous fabrics, but I create, these motifs.
This one is beautiful.
Because people say, where do you get your fabrics from? Here's another one. They ask me, where do you get your fabrics from? They're so complex and everything, but they don't know that I really create these. I create them on tulle, I create them on chiffon, on georgette, on anything that is beautiful.
And then someone manufactures them?
I have probably about half a dozen factories that I work with in China.
Do you think we've gone through this big change since the first time we met and for over the years? Do you think fashion is as important today as it used to be?
It probably is not as important. I think, personal style really figures in much more. For instance, the way I'm dressed today, it has nothing to do with fashion.
Could I wear that?
Of course you can, but it has everything to do with personal style. Personal style is how you really feel about yourself, how you put yourself together, how you accessorize yourself, how you move in the world, basically how you feel about yourself, and what image you want to project into the world. And it's all about energy too. It's all about personal energy.
We loved having you on to introduce you to our audience.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here and in this really beautiful old Hollywood setting.
Thank you, Sue Wong. And don't go away. We'll be right back with artist Phyllis Greene. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. We're here taping at the Hollywood Museum on Highland Avenue in the heart of Hollywood. And I'm with award-winning artist Phyllis Greene, who was raised in Canada, where she earned a Bachelor of Arts at the University of Manitoba in Winnipeg. Then she moved to California and studied in the graduate program at Cal State Fullerton and went on to get her MFA at UCLA. She has a list of awards, including a Guggenheim, a California Arts Council, and National Endowment of the Arts Fellowships. And she has been a lecturer at universities around the world and serves now as the deputy director of the Christopher Isherwood Foundation.
That's an interesting story and something that's really enhanced my life. As you know, because I met you in that capacity, I used to, when I was in grad school and just after grad school, I worked for artists.
I did. You worked for Lottie Dill.
That's right. And you used to jump into the pickup truck and we'd go to UCLA to hear lectures.
Oh, I would go, right.
That's
I
right.
would go because Lottie always said, you were always so supportive. I was teaching this class at UCLA and you would come over and listen to my lectures, which was great. And that's where I did meet you.
That's right.
So one of the things that I was going to ask you is, with all of these awards and all of these places that you have to do, when do you get to make art?
I do it. You know, I'm just a multitasker, like
That's
a
what
lot
a
of
woman-
women, for a long
yeah.
time. And when I was in grad school, I was working part-time for artists. And in 1985, I got a job with Chris and Dawn. Christopher was...
1985?
That's right. Christopher died in January 1986, so it was really at the end of his life. And really, in the last few months that I was there, he was bedridden. But I developed a close relationship with Don and kept on working with him all these years, which is a lot of years.
And I just sat for Don Bacardi again.
That's right.
And
That's right.
The other day, and we were talking about you, Phyllis, and something else that I really wanted to know was, people come to California. You came as an adult. You already had a degree. Mm-hmm. How does an artist get started? And I think that was the answer. It's working with other artists.
It was working with other artists, and I think in California, Southern California particularly, it has a lot to do with schools, because I always was told that in New York it was sort of a small scene and there were clubs and openings, but Los Angeles, because it was so sprawling, that you kind of set up shop at a school, and that way you met the teachers there. And I was just lucky because Laddie was very prominent. Laddie was a faculty member at UCLA, as
that's
he
where
said.
you met him?
And I was looking for a work-study job on my first day as a UCLA grad student, and I got a work-study job with Laddie.
Oh, I see. But that is a way for people to
Absolutely,
integrate themselves.
absolutely. And there's, you know, schools, there's the Cal Arts group and the UCLA group and the USC group. And
when I was thinking about when we met, I kept thinking it was back at Otis.
no.
Because you were at Otis a lot,
No, I
weren't
wasn't.
you?
Everybody thinks that, but my husband was at Otis.
Oh, is that
Ave,
what
for
happened?
25 years. Yeah, he was director, Ave Pildes. He was director of the Communication Arts Department.
So is that where I met him?
Probably. Must have been.
Yeah,
Because he was there for a long time.
Okay. So you multitask. You were appointed to the Santa Monica Arts Commission, which is a big deal. Do you think that someone on a commission can make a difference in the arts in the city?
I do. I was, when I moved to Santa Monica in 2000, and I was asked if I would join the Arts Commission, and I was like,
But it's an appointment.
I did
Someone
it,
has to know.
Yeah, and then I was appointed, and then I was chair for a couple of years.
Yes.
And one of the things that I did, my biggest accomplishment, I think, is getting a percent for art from developers in Santa Monica. That's existed for a long time in LA, but we didn't have one in Santa Monica.
Oh, you didn't have it, because we had one in Beverly
Right.
Hills.
Oh, a long time ago,
And
right.
then we had a pool where if they didn't get the art, that if they wanted to bring art in, we had to approve it.
Right.
And if they didn't want to bring art in, we had a pool where they would put the money in, then we
Oh.
could buy a piece of
yeah,
art for the
well,
city.
the developers have options. They
Yes,
can either give it to
yes,
an artist,
yes.
commission a piece, or put it into a pool that the city will use, right?
Well, and you've done a lot of public commissions, and I know when you came here to the Hollywood Museum, we were going like, you've been here, you've been on this corner, and why was it?
Well, in the 90s, when the Metro system was being built, there were a lot of mitigation projects because the merchants in Hollywood were not happy that a big fence and a big hole was going to be on Highland and Hollywood, which is where the big shopping complex is now. And so there was a fence, big fence there, and I was hired to put something on the fence that would make it more attractive. And Hollywood was way different then.
And that wasn't so long ago,
well,
really.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Well,
it was a little, a little rough. It hadn't been redeveloped. There were still tourists looking at stars every day.
What did you do to put it?
Well,
what did you think of
I did
putting?
something, first of all, that I thought was terrific, but the community did not. And that was making posters, like one-sheets of people in Hollywood pretending they were in movies. So we asked students at Hollywood High and students at the Senior Center, if you were in a movie about you and starring you, what would it be called and what would the poster look like? So I had these mass-produced. It was the early days of digital multi-printing, and I had them wild posted by a company that did that on the wall. Well, the merchants hated that.
But that's what you're supposed to do with public art. You're supposed to engage your surroundings, right?
Right.
And you're supposed to bring people in so that those people approve of what it is. And you had students and people working
I did.
here.
I thought it was fun. People who are in the posters loved it, but the merchants, I think they were just like mad at the MTA and trying to oppose anything they did,
Right.
but
they
thought
continue
it was,
to be every time they try to put a new line in, they're still mad at them.
Yeah. People don't like change.
I know, and you've been in a lot of personal collections. If you go through your bio, I mean, the list is like as long as your arm. You've been in a lot of group shows. And what has been the theme of your work? Can I hold this
Well,
up?
certainly.
This looks like an artifact from Mexico.
It does somewhat. I have a background in ceramics, which I have used off and on in my career, which I consider started in the 80s. And I think what unifies my work is an interest in the body. And also, it also touches on the realm of gender politics and the issues of modernism and issues of craft and decoration. That is, my early revelation I had was, why is everything that's decorative considered
Not art.
second class? Not art, right.
Not art.
Not art. And so I purposefully started making pieces that were embellished with all sorts of
like
jewels.
this.
And this one, however, also I have another aspect of my work is that I also draw upon the work of well-known artists. And this piece is inspired by the Degas ballerina
I was just going to say, this
at
has
the
to
Norton
be.
Simon, which is, he did mostly, people know his ballerina paintings, but he also did sculptures.
Yes.
And there's one in the one in the Norton Simon that has an actual fabric tutu, and that's what inspired this.
Seeing that, and
Yeah.
there that is. But did you ever work with wood?
I did.
I
I worked
remember
with wood.
the
That's
wood
right.
pieces.
I went from clay to combining clay and wood, and then working with wood for really a long time, about 10 or 15, well, not 10 or 15 years, 10 years maybe, and it was the sort of armature of my pieces. But I think what's characteristic of my work now is that I like to put different materials together. Like this is clay, although it looks like metal, iron, as you observed, but it's really clay.
It's really clay. Something like this.
Those pieces are from that period that I described, where I was trying to lay on all the decoration and ornament that I could.
And adding different things,
Right, and adding, little bits of fabric and flounce and
Does that
ruffles.
become archival? I mean, do the flounces and those kind of
these
things?
pieces are, God, now I did them in the 90s, started making them in 1990, and they're fine. They're great.
And this?
Those
This
are
is
hairdo.
more like...
Right,
yeah.
exactly. That's when I started doing this carving technique. Those are the hairdo pieces that I started doing in the 1990s, and that was related to my interest in feminism and interested in hair as sort of the one organ of the body that defies nature and gravity, that is, you can maintain your hairstyles for a long time. And
when do you start carving?
I make the pieces and I let them get to a hard stage, and then I start carving. So even though I might use the same mold for a number of different pieces, I use they're all carved individually. So the carving is like drawing, and it's very relaxing and meditative, unlike a lot of the other things I do.
We spoke about all the collections you're in and group shows you've been in. Do you think that influenced the judges for the Guggenheim Award, or do they look at that?
No, I think so. The Guggenheim is a tough one to get, and you need to submit a career narrative and also a statement of plans. So I think
a statement of plans, and this is your statement of plans.
That was a big part of it. Yeah.
Tell us about it. I see.
Well, I had a show, a big 25-year survey show, which is what this catalog is from, called Splendid Entities, and this was at the Ben Maltz Gallery in 2011. And I had at Otis, College of Art and Design.
Right.
And I had a chance to look at my work again for 25 years of my work. And I saw that it all had body connections, and it was all, I felt sort of autobiographical, but I said, I'm going to do something that's really autobiographical, that's really figurative, because I'd never done anything particularly representational. It all alluded to figures.
Oh, and now this is representational.
That is representational, and it's also me. You might not be able to see it in that photo.
But look how big is it?
But it's bigger than me. There's me next to it, so it's 8 feet tall. And I said that I often do work that's inspired by formative examples of contemporary modern art. And that one was inspired by the Charles Ray piece that was in Helter Skelter in 1991, which he called Fall 91.
Everything he made was very big.
Giant. And he talked about it in regard to the feeling that one gets in relation to one's parents, that, you know, there's this looming authority figure in your life.
Right.
I always thought that it was sort of a knock at the career woman because of that suit and the foreboding sort of presence of the figure. And I've done a lot of travel in the last 10 years, and I've been to India a number of times, which segues into my involvement with the Isherwood Foundation, which I'll talk about. But I also was captivated by the figures I saw at the temples in India, which are draped. Worshippers come along and drape these in cloth as acts of reverence, or puja, which they call it. And I said when I left India the last time that I wanted to make a big figure that was more North American, that would symbolize or have a part of the philosophy of India, which I was interested in.
Fantastic. It's a great piece, and I'm so glad you came and explained it all to us.
Oh, thank you.
And I think that, before we leave, just quickly, that influence came from Christopher Isherwood. And we don't have time to talk about it, but I know it did come from that.
Right.
And
it comes from the Vedanta Center, which is really close to here.
And I'm so glad you were here at the Hollywood Museum.
Well, thank you, Joan.
Thanks,
a pleasure.
Phyllis.
Thank you.
Keep writing, JAQUINN1 at AOL.com. Bye.